So everything expressed from this moment on is my opinion and my opinion alone, not on behalf of Castle and Key Distillery in Frankfort, Kentucky, DSPKY 18.
All right, now we got the legal out of the way. A podcast about bourbon and the ones who drink it. This is Bourbon Matters. Welcome to Bourbon Matters. I'm Jake.
I'm Dan.
I'm Jake C.
And tonight, we got Wilson Torres with us from representing Castle and Key to some degree. We're really glad to have you. This has been a few weeks in the making, so it's good to actually get to sit down with you and talk about Castle and Key a little bit. I think we're all drinking the Gold Eagle Restoration Rye pick.
Yeah.
Except for Dan.
I'm not.
Because he doesn't have it.
I'm actually not either.
Oh, you're not either? Okay.
I technically not even drinking Castle and Key right now, and I have
Dude,
a
you're not
strong.
supposed to say that.
I have a so Jake just said to lie and say that I was drinking it, and I had a better. I don't want to lie to our tens of listeners. If you listened last week, I was drinking a hot toddy because I was sick, and I'm still sick, so I'm still drinking James Pepper 1776 because it was at one time a medicinal whiskey. I've been drinking it for a week. I'm still sick, and I'm starting to question and wonder if medicinal whiskey was actually really helpful or not, because I haven't felt a dying better since. So I don't know if it's helping, but I still like drinking it, and I didn't want to have Castle and Key Gold Eagle barrel pick taste like mucus. Like, I'm fine 1776 tasting like mucus for a night, but I didn't want to waste a good pour on a crap palate. So that's my reasoning. You can hate me or say I'm a liar or whatever. I'm fine with it. I'll take it. I'm also drinking water too because my throat's killing me.
That's fair. You know what? I brought up the medicinal aspect, Dan, and I'm curious to know, was things of past what was considered medicinal, was that proof down or was that straight? Was that single barrel?
I really don't know. They had some of the medicinal bottles there. I'm on a tour. When we were at Pepper, I don't remember what proof was on it.
Yeah.
I can do some little research here in the background.
I don't recall. If I had to guess, they were probably like at 80.
Still for the purposes
of
being able
I would guess 80 or 100.
Yeah.
Maybe more for sure, but
Yeah,
mostly 80 probably.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious to know what was considered a medicinal proof, if you will.
Yeah. I don't remember
Make
ever.
you sweat. It's got to make you sweat.
Isn't
Right.
all whiskey medicinal?
I think.
I mean, it was at one point. But now, since it become, like, has Buffalo Trace always been the proof that it has always been, or has, Old Force always been a pro? I mean, why is there there's an array of proofs? Like, what was the original proof, and why haven't we just stuck to a proof in that regard?
Yeah.
I'm going to play a lot of devil's advocate because that's just the mother.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Whiskeys taste better or worse at different proofs, and
Absolutely. Which is why we always release in vintage fashion. It's like, we honor the barrel. We respect Mother Nature and time and whatnot. So we want to make sure that, what we blend, hey, is it worth putting out at batch strength, which we'll soon start doing? Or do we bring it down a couple 2-3 notches and bring it in something that is more, approachable by many more, So, the time that Castle and Key, man, has brought a lot of more questions than I've ever had. Previous two brands that I've represented, proudly in full fledged and effectively, and a lot of cool things have popped to mind, and I'm just like, I'm challenging myself, but that's one part of our mantra. Is to honor history, but at the same time challenge the very traditions of it.
So you brought up a great point, how you guys release in vintage fashion, and I'm a huge, huge fan of that. Do you know why you guys decided to originally do that, or do you want to touch on that?
Yeah, I basically, in a nutshell, we just didn't want to get stuck like the other, call it the big six. They're stuck making what they make on the mainstream. They can't make anything. I mean, they can make a shit ton of other things if they wanted to, but they express that in different forms. The Sazerac line. You got your Buffalo Trace, you got your Eagle Rare, you got your, E.H. Taylor Jr., so on and so forth. And but that's a consistently tasting whiskey. You know that you're going to get a bottle that's going to taste the same every single time. Mm-hmm. Our intention, again, is to refer back to what I just mentioned, was to provide you a consistent quality whiskey, but with a different experience behind it. And that comes in flavor. It just comes in through the five senses, if you will. The intention was to give you that, because every bottle of wine is different, which is why there's so many more wine drinkers out there that really can talk more about it and really talk you through experiences, because they always refer back to that first vintage that they've always had. We, as bourbon drinkers today, I remember the first time I had Jack. We all do, because it was coming out instead of going. You dig what I'm saying? But with us, we wanted to make sure it's like, my first experience with Castle and Key was, batch 1, 2022, call it. And then my next favorite was batch 3 of, batch 1 of 2023. Why? Well, because they're going to be consistently different, yet quality and well thought out. And what's wonderful is that we're still in our infancy, so that allows us to really, if we have to change something up, which we have had to just recently in our infancy. We were going into a barrel at a certain proof, but because of our proximity, we've had to alter that. We had to go a little higher in proof, into the barrel, so that we are not losing so much because of that, again, our proximity. So we wanted to honor those very things. We wanted to pay respect to the very, that very proximity where we're at, Mother Nature and time and so forth, so that when that does come to mature and it comes to time to start blending, that we did right by it. So, nice. And so as winemakers have a respect for what they do, the craft, the history, the region, the country, the culture. We can do the same things out of Kentucky. So why not? Yeah. And again, Colonel E.H. Taylor Jr. did the same thing in his travels to Europe, which is how the Old Taylor Distillery was established. Was the very experiences that he had in Europe when he traveled, and he brought those back. Drinking beer in a German, beer garden, and wine in France, eating al fresco in Italy, seaside and in Greece. He took all those experiences and he brought them over because that was the experience he wanted to give, and he had the acreage to do it. He had the money to do it. He had the ambition to and passion. So that is why. Why wouldn't we honor, again, history, form a tradition, and now we're challenging that very tradition as Castle and Key today.
The most impressive thing is how he brought Seaside to Kentucky. That was
where we're now Creekside.
Yeah, Creekside. So with the different batches that you guys have been doing, are those different mash bills, just different blends, different yeast strains? What are you guys doing in between batches, or is that something you guys can't talk about?
No, we can talk about it fully. It's transparent. We have it on all our sell sheets, our tech sheets that we offer all of our distributor reps and distributor partnerships, and especially our retailer partnerships like we have here with Jake. We are full transparent. And to answer your question, it is the same mash bill always. It is just the blending, the art that goes into the blending of that, lot of barrels. We are at a capacity where right now we can blend anywhere between 50 to 80 barrels per batch. That is our capacity because that is the app, So we have to, but at the same time, even, you would think that because of that short run or that short, small batch, that it's going to be the best. Well, we've had some batches that, may have hit or miss and they're slow moving, and then until that runs out, our distributor's stuck in a sense where, we can't, you can't just keep stockpiling batches if you're not pulling through. So we have to really be thoughtful in what we provide our partners. We have to be very, very thoughtful, and we have to be very, very strategic, which is why not everyone got the bourbon, which is why not everyone gets the same rye batch. Well, because you're still sitting, or you're just not ready for it. We're not trying to be prima donnas or anything. We just want to set everyone up for success. We want to set up ourselves for success. Mm-hmm. So that is the reason why. We do play with different strands of yeast. We do have some experimentals that we play around with, that we're sitting on, that we're curious to know where they're at. But who we are and where we are in our existence allows us to be. Again, back to the big six. They've been doing it for the last 100 to 200 years, so they kind of have to keep doing it that way to keep up with that, which is why they fill the 8 millionth barrel with it, and so on and so forth. And we respect that, we really do. But I'm going to say this, not all, the tide may, raise all ships, but your ship is bigger than mine. In fact, I got a little tugboat, so
Yeah.
So it just comes down to.
Yeah, I love the vintage thing because I think a lot of consumers now are becoming more brand loyal, but they also don't want to drink the same thing every single time. They want to explore and try different things. Yeah. And this gives a Castle and Key lover a chance to collect and drink the different batches and compare them side by side and kind of see how you guys evolve as you grow and learn and tweak. And whatnot. So I think that's super cool. And it gives, differentiation between the bottles on the shelf. When you go in and buy a bottle of Buffalo Trace, who knows when it was bottled and how many barrels were in that batch. And you just kind of assume automatically it should taste exactly the same every time, when if you bought bottles from different years, it might not taste exactly the same. If you have a trained palate, you can pick out those differences. But I think this makes it a lot more fun for someone who really enjoys Castle and Key to explore the different, whiskey that you can produce in a given year. And it's almost like a hybrid between wine and beer, because wine, you rely a lot on the grapes and how the weather was to grow that year. That plays into how that vintage is. And relates to beer in a sense that people love a certain brewery, and the brewery comes out with a new beer every week, every 2 weeks. Your phase 3 is your hop butcher, and you're going to seek out that new beer because you don't want your palate just to get burnt out by the same thing over and over. But you mentioned that you switched up the entry proof. Can you talk on that? Is that for the rye? Is that for the bourbon?
It's for both, actually. Yeah, we switched it up. We were going in at 110 for our rye and 105 or 107 for our bourbon. So we've gone
very low.
And then very low. But historically speaking, how many other brands did that? There were several brands that were going in low. In fact, there's still some brands. I mean, those very brands still go in low. I believe.
I know Maker's is like a 110, but I haven't heard of. I don't know if I've heard of any distillery going lower than 110.
Yeah, 107.
I'm sure there are.
Yeah, but we are very thoughtful. We're very smart in what we do, and flavor that's our objective, is flavor. So given everything, as mentioned before, our proximity, we're in the valley, so we're 6 miles from Buffalo Trace to our west, and then 2 miles from Woodford Reserve to our east, with the stave right in between us. So that's kind of nice too.
I just went there for the first time when we were down there a couple weeks ago.
I mean, that was
so good.
Things. I love that place. So shout out to the state. But because of that proximity where we're at along the creek and everything, we have to treat our whiskeys, if I may use, the analogy of barbecue, slow and low. We have a brick and rick, house. Our warehouse is literally brick and rick. That's all it is.
Fallout shelters.
Well, yeah, we go 4 high, 12 deep, and that's it. And we go that for 4
and
stories.
a million long.
And a million. What is it? 2 football fields. There's one way in and one way out, and it's ridiculous. But taking all those things into consideration, we learned from laying down our previous, stillet in our barrels, I should say, that as things that were coming out as we kept tasting, it's like we're losing proof. Now we're not into the proof game, but proof does 2 things for you. Obviously, is measuring the alcohol content of your spirit, but at the same time, it does have something to do with flavor to a degree. And considering our mash bill using white corn, that was a little nervous peak. We were using white corn as our main corn, heirloom white corn, as opposed to the yellow dent corn that is used by most. And then our higher content of malted barley at 17 in our bourbon, and then minimum 10 minimum 10 in rye in our bourbon, and then 20 in our rye. We really were faced with a challenge here, which we put ourselves in, which we wanted. So because of our losing proof because of our proximity again within that valley, we had to increase our entry proof, and that way we weren't losing too much and we were gaining more. Not adding too much more water, so that's a good thing, which was a phenomenal thing. Our early distillates, taste-wise, the panel, we voted that it's actually a much more viscous distillate, considering, and a lot more complex, so that we hope that within the next 2 to 3 years when we keep testing, and then 4 when we get to that maturation apex for our rye, at least that we're right. But it's all subjective, and it's, and Mother Nature takes its course, and that's the thing, So that
I do want to, I'm sorry. I do want to play devil's advocate a little bit.
Absolutely.
And say, there are people that go specifically to look for, the same consistency from bottle to bottle, year to year, month to month, whatever. So do you have plans to release anything in that consistent fashion? Or will it always and forever be the vintage batch style?
Hey, that's for us to learn. Who's to say that we won't? Maybe that is the route that we'll take. Maybe that's not the route we'll take. Maybe we have gained a success in this fandom that Jake has expressed himself being a fan of already, liking the fact that, hey, we're going to get a consistent quality made product, but the fact that we're going to be able to come along on that journey as how the flavor has developed and or not. Sorry, there's a big wind thing going on here, so we're going to get some flicks and flippers.
All right.
Or do we play the game like the big six and let's just offer it and hope that they jump on board and we have generational drinkers to come for the next 20 to 40 years? That is a question that we have to ask ourselves. It becomes more of a strategic question than it is a production question.
Yeah.
But we really do love where we're at right now in offering a vintage fashion form, because again, it really does continue us. Once you stick to something, Jake, you're done. You got nothing else to hope for, except the fact that you want people to drink it and continuously drink it for the years to come.
Sure.
But when you still have that door open to consistently challenge yourself to make the next batch that much more interesting, complex, and or better, subjectively, of course.
Yeah.
I think that continues the curiosity, that continues the challenge, and it continues that journey, if you will.
Yeah, that's a great question and great point. But I for sure see the future drinker of whiskey, especially the younger generation, wanting something a little bit different each time.
Yeah, I feel, it's funny. I'm Puerto Rican by descent. Not that you knew that, or maybe I already gave that away. But my culture is rum, and that's it. And maybe a Cutty Sark here and there. If you were, drinking old style or whatever may be the case. Again, another reference to my upbringing. But I challenged that very culture of my own. And well, there's got to be more than that. Because, rum and cokes I got tired of. They gave me headaches, and I was just like, ugh. So I ventured out. I came across whiskey. And then my first whiskey drink was a Black Label and ginger ale. My second drink was a 7 and 7. Just to give you, again, because you're looking for where do I fit? Where do I belong?
Right.
And then it was until I had an old fashioned, and I was just like, I'm done. And that was early on. So it speaks to that. So the generational drinker, to Jake's point, is changing. So it's not so much what was your grandpa, your dad, your uncles were drinking. It's now what you want to drink, what you find interesting, what you can, within yourself say, hey, I brought Castle Key to my 12, buddies and their girlfriends, or I brought, Castle Key to my girlfriends and their sisters and or their family might be okay. So that's where we're at right now. People want to be the first to talk about shit instead of just like, yeah, I'm just going to talk about what they talk about because it's easier that way.
Yeah. I like it too of you guys aren't just sold 100% on whiskey. That you guys also have some great gins. And I'm not a big clear liquor guy, but when I went down there and did the tour there, we had to do a tasting a lot of different gins. And then I sat creekside and had 1 or 6 drinks that were there. I love the fact that you guys not are only just do gin, you make great gin, but then I also like how you guys are big with cocktails. One of my favorite things, we talked about this kind of as we just kind of on the call, the Millville Mule syrup that you guys have of you don't need ginger beer to make a mule. You need the spirit and then you pour that in and it's great. And I think that's like, it's kind of your guys' I'm guessing philosophy of not just being a whiskey company, of being a great spirits company and then creating an experience around that spirit.
Yeah, the gins are damn good.
Yeah,
I have to just add in on that.
Yeah,
I've talked to so many whiskey people who are like, I don't like gin, but that Castle and Key gin, I can sip that on a hot day.
Yeah. And that was the thing. A lot of the misconception in regards to our gin, and thank you very much for the kind words, because that's one thing that I truly pride, myself, and just I'm proud of what we do in that regard. And that what better way to challenge those very traditions of Kentucky distilling and or American whiskey history that pretty much started in maybe not started in Kentucky. It's obviously started out in on the East Coast and made its way to the West, but what better way to challenge it than by making a clear spirit,
and that's coming from a liquor store guy, and we get every distillery makes a gin.
Yeah.
Everyone wants us to carry their gin. Everyone wants hearing about gins, but you can talk to me about Castle and Key gin all day long.
Yeah. I appreciate that. Which is why he always gets, first dibs on a lot of that, on the second nature things that we do. Well, because he believes in it. And that's the thing. We really believed in what we had already in the barrels, as far as our whiskey is concerned, to pay homage to the history of the very 113 acres you guys were able to roam and take a part of and really take in. But also it was an opportunity to really challenge that. So, and what better way to do so with the very distillate that's in the actual barrels? That's what makes it so unique. That's what makes it so fucking great, and using the very some botanicals that are native to Kentucky and those very, grounds that you guys were able to roam, one of the things that I still to this day is like, it's freaking unbelievable that we're able to produce such an amazing line of gins, gin spirits. And then of course a vodka made with our bourbon distillate, which is unheard of. But that, so a lot of the misconception in that regard, going back to my original point, was, because they needed to keep the lights on. No, we didn't need to do that. We didn't need to get into that game. We wanted to get into that game. We wanted that challenge. Again, we're a young company. We're going into our 6th full year of existence. What keeps the light on is our contract distilling, our contract barreling, and our contract, aging, and so on and so forth. That keeps some of the lights on, and then the gin is just it's just another skew, to speak the language and another experience. But we knew that we had something cool because, how we were doing it, not so much what we were doing, but how we were doing it, and that came through. Not only in our verbal description of it, in our story behind it, but the actual taste of it. Again, we're all about the 5 senses, and we're all about hospitality. We consider ourselves a hospitality brand. So what you guys experienced when you guys first got out of your cars and you got up to that front, rainstorm blue, door to the castle, that's intentional. That is intentional. And then what you were able to hear, speak of, taste, listen to, touch, that's also intentional. Because what better way to, to show hospitality, but allowing you to take all those things in, but knowing that every single 5 of your senses were touched and were affected, and then you can always go back and just say 2 words, Castle and Key.
Yeah, I think the coolest moment I had there was I was talking to, I think he was either one of the distillers or assistant distillers or something, and he was telling me that he had worked on the train lines for a long, long time in his life and just kind of got tired of it and decided to leave and come work at Castle and Key. And his biggest take home was, he's like, is it harder work? And is it an older building? And do I sweat a lot? Yes. Do I get to work in a museum every day though? Yes. And that was one of his take homes. It was pretty cool to hear from an employee.
Yeah. And you know what? And those guys in the cistern room and that warehouse crew, let me tell you something. I spent 2 days with them. The one day in the warehouse, the one day in the cistern room. And 8 hours of one of those days, because it's not just an 8-hour shift. They go sometimes 10 to 12. But I was lucky enough just to do 8. And I did it in Warehouse B. And Warehouse B is that, obviously, the warehouse that we referred to earlier, 500 plus feet long, 4 stories high, nothing but brick and literally rick. We cannot use anything but manpower on any of those floors because everything is still in its original state. You can't use a pneumatic pump. You can't use anything because it'll just fucking burst right through, just break right through those wooden floors that are already warped and whatnot. So you're literally putting 550 plus pounds on your shoulders and you're in your hands and you're clocking it and you're rolling it. I mean, we're doing it like they did back in 1887 and then some, so it's humbling. I'll never fucking ever do it again. But I can say that I was able to be one of those who did. And I love the museum thing. I never thought of it that way. I mean, I just feel who we are is historic enough. And I text Jake this very same message when you guys got to the front door. I'm like, dude, take it in, let it speak to you. Really just absorb it all because this is special. I mean, especially on the day that was gloomy and shit, because you guys didn't have a pretty day. You guys had a gloomy day, which even made it better because I feel it just brings everything.
Yeah, it was.
So I was just like, hell yeah. I'm like, they're going to walk away. If not already, impressed, they're going to walk at least with an experience and something to remember and share in that regard. So, yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, you touched on that your vodka is made from the bourbon distillate.
That's correct.
And I'm going to say this, and I hope I'm correct. Otherwise, I'm going to look like an asshole. But I'm pretty sure that your gin is your rye distillate, right?
That is correct.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Which I think is pretty cool, because that's not very common at all.
No, it's not. It's usually the commonality is to use a neutral grain spirit that you buy from someone else or make yourself. But we already spend the money to make our distillate that goes into barrels, and why not use a very distillate and very material that we're already spending money on to continue to bring that challenge to forward.
Yeah.
So and plus again, we're very smart, we're very thoughtful in what we do. So what better way to make a gin, which is it's an infused neutral grain with botanicals, but with something that already has an oil chemical characteristic or compound to it.
Mm-hmm.
You use, massage oils, essential oils, cooking oils. I mean, what is that? An oil essentially is flavor. So what better component, and carrier to use for botanicals and or flavors than oil, Mm-hmm. So that's how we came to that, and that's when we knew we would succeed. Our Roots of Ruin gin, our everyday gin that comes that's on the shelf every day at 106, as far as proof is concerned. Not to boast, but I think that's phenomenal.
Yeah.
At the price point that it is.
Well, I mean, that's uncommon for gins to be proofed that high anyway.
Correct. But what's cool is that, it's a gin that is number 3 on the Nielsen rating behind Hendrix and Botanist right now. I mean, come on. And
if more people tried it, I guarantee it would be.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah, in fact, I'm thinking shit for considering our infancy and to be that high on the Nielsen, chart. Yes, Jake, I agree with you. Get it more in front of people. I think it'll start creeping up, and that was not expected, but it is fact, and we're proud of it. Which prompted us to, I'm like, all right, if we got this going for us, this is our everyday gin, then our seasonal gin is just going to be that much special. Which is
yeah, and it's very good, neat, very good in cocktails. That's kind of hard to find in a gin, is versatile like that.
Yeah.
Usually it's either one or the other. So
agreed. Well said. Thank you.
Yeah,
I would have respected you more if you would have lied there purposely, just so Jake would have seemed like more of an asshole. Like that's 100% acceptable.
No, I've never had a good cocktail with it.
No, we don't use rye. Where the hell did you hear that from?
Oh. And that, that's the thing. We I can share this with you guys today. So finally, I had to keep it hush because it's something I've been working on for quite some time now, but it's been landed. So we will now be the Rail Gin at all Hampton Socials, part of the of the Parker Hospitality Group. So we're looking at 9 locations over 4 to 5 states now. As far as the national thing, we beat out Botanist by a shit ton. And price wasn't even part of the conversation. It was just all about the flavor, about the versatility, to Jake's point, that it had. So that's something I'm really, really looking forward to seeing hit, the hospitality industry pretty soon here, hopefully within the next month and a half. So it's really exciting.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Congrats.
Really
With the gin, are you also doing different batches with that and your seasonals, or is your mainline gin kind of your mainline gin and your seasonals are where they are, but the seasonals could change based on trying something new in a spring season or something?
All three. Essentially, to start off, to answer your question, Dan, our Roots of Ruin gin is our everyday gin. Comes at 106, 7 botanicals, 4 of which are native to Kentucky, that we were actually found in our restoration of our 113 acres. And then we thought, we've got such a great concept here. Let's do a seasonal. Let's do a spring and fall every year. And we started to do that. But then we found ourselves in a predicament where it's like, shit, hold on, that's going to put a lot on our partners. That's going to put a lot on our distributors. But we thought partners first. We did. Because it's their shelf.
Right.
And every market's different. In Chicago, I can tell you that, I wish, they all had the space that Jake at Gold Eagle does.
And where?
At Gold Eagle Liquors in Libertyville, Illinois.
No, what city did you talk to? I just want to hear you say it again.
I thought you were looking for a plug.
I'm always looking for a plug, but I like hearing you say Chicago.
But that's I appreciate that. But it's truth. Not here in Chicago. It's crazy because everyone has different, real estate, layouts, and they can't keep it all. Although they may do really well with our brand, but they just don't. They have rooms for 2 SKUs, 2 facings. So sometimes you got to just like shit. So we really thought our partnerships first. I mean, who would have thought that? Who would have thought anyone would say that? But I'm the first one to say it because that's how we feel. That's how I treat my independence, because I firmly believe in it. And Jake can attest to that. I know he can. I know he would. Because our independents to me are everything. Our small business partners are everything to us. So that being said, we were like, all right, we took a step back. Let's look at this concept a little bit deeper. Aside from our partnerships, where does that leave us as the producer of such? Well, we also need space to be able to do that, because you have to produce so much in order to service the now 20 states that we're in now. Okay. So let's get out of this. We started to, and then we're like, no, let's stop. Let's keep the Roots of Ruin, which is our everyday. That's our heavy hitter. That's our our home run grand slam. And then we'll pick 2, if not develop 1 from here on out permanently for the spring, summer, fall, winter releases. However, but let's make it accessible all year round, not just during the season, not an LTO, limited time release. because that way, if it's in a cocktail with our our on-premise partners, they're not copped out and they're not forced to bring on more than they need to, because they also have space limitations and so on and so forth, and expenditures and budgets and so on and so forth. Again, we're very thoughtful in everything we do. So we did that. So our spring summer, as of last week, will be the Rise, which is a new. It was our 2021 spring release, and we kind of tweaked it just slightly, improved or some way. So I can't remember. Right, I apologize, but that's forever our spring and summer. Then our Harvest Gin, which is the Mr. Gray of freaking gins that are out there. I put it up against anything. It's so versatile. That will be forever our spring, summer. I'm sorry, fall, winter. However, we will continue to experiment and release under the Wool Gatherer branding a barrel gin. We just released last fall. We did something that was pretty cool at Abercrombie barrels.
That's what I want to see out on the market.
Yeah, so you'll see those things out of the distillery. And again, if it's something that we feel could really, depending on the reception of it and how it's used, and if we get some feedback, unsolicited feedback from markets and whatnot, we will consider mass producing it. So as long as it makes sense. Again, we have to be thoughtful. We have to be strategic and smart about what we do, because we can't put ourselves out on the line if we can't support it properly and fully. Again, we are a distillery 100 strong, and that's it. 6 of those are individuals such as myself who are out in market every day, spreading the good taste and sharing the good story, and then, honoring history at the same time. So.
Nice. So I do want to segue to the rye, because the rye is what sold me 100% on Castle and Key at the I can't remember when you were out here. Last year.
It was like last fall, the first one. Shout out to Brett Connors.
Yeah.
Came up for that one, which I ran into him at the distillery.
Yeah, because where we tried, I believe, the gins, and a couple different restoration ryes, and the Gold Eagle pick debuted that night, I think.
Yes.
Last year. So that's what I'm drinking tonight, which is 120.6 proof.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's a 2022 release. This is like absolutely phenomenal. And I know that you, in the last masterclass, which was in February, I think, you said that you guys aren't a single barrel, or at least that's not your priority, is releasing single barrels. But I do have to say that this makes a really strong case for doing so. Because the regular restoration rye is phenomenal. I've had, I think, at least 3 different batches, and they're all just excellent.
Thank you.
They're all very like floral in on the palate, and have really excellent long finishes. And it's I can't remember what the mash bills are for the ryes.
No problem.
But
it's consistent. It'll be consistent, but the mash bill, to refresh your memory, Jake, it's 63% rye, 20% malted barley, unheard of, and then 17% dent corn, yellow corn. And that was per inspiration, because Colonel Taylor Jr. did not make a rye when he was producing his Old Taylor bourbon, obviously, because he just made bourbon. But we did come across some glass flasks, pint flasks, of his bourbon with a 1917 tax stamp on it. And obviously we drank it. And we had some reverse engineered to give us the premise of what how we can honor that very finding, but this very, distillery of what it was into our objective of restoring it. Mm-hmm. So that was the premise for our bourbon. Because the reverse engineering, although they weren't able to give us exact amounts, they were able to give us what he used, and he used an heirloom white corn, a high amount of malted barley, and a very minimal amount of rye, to the point it was almost undetectable, and also the yeast strain was undetectable. But when Vendome came in to retrofit what was necessary to start production in 2015, they were able to find some cooling, an engineering aspect of the distilling process or the transferring process that Colonel Taylor had implemented in a cooling tube, some strands of yeast that again influenced our choices of yeast strain. So the question then becomes, all right, we're honoring him by making a bourbon with heirloom white corn, high malted barley, minimal rye. What would a rye been if he had produced it? Mm-hmm. Hence the restoration, which was the first whiskey that we laid down into barrels. Because obviously, as we know, rye will mature much quicker than a bourbon will.
Yeah.
Which is still really fucking crazy to me. Isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. 1 grain.
Yeah, the rye is incredible. I think the single barrels are very special, not only because of how good they are, but how different they could taste. Mm-hmm. I think I've tasted about 5 different single barrel proof ryes from Castle and Key, and they're all vastly different.
They are. And
they're all consistently good as well. I remember the first time I went to Castle and Key, we just happened to get there on... It was like one of the first single barrel proof that you guys have ever released. And a couple of buddies that I was with got one, opened it that night, blinded me on it. And I should have put 2 and 2 together, but I had no idea. We all brought boxes and boxes of whiskey. Yeah. So like, who knows what he's going to pour for me? So first pour of the night, he's like, here, I want you to taste this. So I'm thinking it's probably something he's had that he really likes and wants to show it to me. But it was the first taste of the Castle and Key, and I swore it was an old, dusty Wild Turkey pick. And it tasted like bourbon. It didn't even taste like rye. And every single barrel I've had of the rye is so much different, and they're consistently good.
Yeah. And yes, Jake, we're not in the business of single barrels. We are too young in our existence to. I mean, we do have a single barrel program, obviously, but that's not the focal point of our business. It's not our focal point of our partnerships. Mm-hmm. We just found that. Brett Connors and the other members of the tasting panel that, when we get together, it's like, man, but this is, when we get together, we're getting lots of barrels together for the next blend. But man, every once in a while, you're going to come across a really special barrel and it really needs to be showcased. So mm-hmm. that's the existence of it. Very minimal. Right now, last year, there were only 50 barrels or 40 or 50 barrels that were considered single barrel worthy and sold. That's to cover then 16 markets. And I was lucky enough to place one of those barrels with Jake at Gold Eagle. And then of course the other, few throughout, Illinois and into Wisconsin and then Nebraska and so on and so forth. So not, but we also found, again, back to how thoughtful we are. I was like, well, you know what? Who says we have to sell single barrels? Mm-hmm. There's no law that says we have to. But if we give into demand, that completely disrupts who we are. So let's keep it exclusive.
Sure,
we use it as a reward. And it's almost like when we go shopping, you punch in your phone number or your reward program, mm-hmm. and you get a couple extra dollars off certain purchases or anything. Jake doesn't get an extra discount for picking a single barrel, but Jake does get that exclusivity that he can boast if he wanted to, which he's not a boastful individual at all, nor is.
You say that.
I've only known him for 4 years.
Boastful might not be the right word.
I'm joking.
Those things were like, it
Dan's jealous.
Just a wee bit.
It's in all form of the singularity of hate, so I get it. That's right, Dan. I mean, But
Dan, why don't you boast about the Knob Creek pick that you picked?
Oh,
we can do that. We can do that later.
okay.
We'll let Wilson run.
But let's do it. Let's do it when you can actually taste it, though. Too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there is, but that's a very good segue though, Dan, because what we wanted to stay away from was that we didn't want to do single barrel so that people can come and say, "Oh, I got a single barrel. I did this single barrel, that single." But that's not what we're about. We're not about we're about you drinking our stuff consistently and often and sharing and so on and so forth. And single barrels shouldn't be because you wanted one or because you did one. It should be a reward, for what you have done. And that is supporting us from day one. And that is buying into who we are and what we do and why we do it. Not just because we told you so, but you tasted so. So because of that, we're going to extend that to you. Jake is the only retailer, and I mentioned this at this last masterclass, to have a second barrel pick with us.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he didn't get it because I said so. He said it because he earned so. His support and what he's done for us in his neck of the woods and that part of the state and that flows. We know the reach that Gold Eagle has. That means a shit ton. Why wouldn't we reward him with an opportunity to? Why not send him an invite? Hey, we'd like for you to to take select another barrel, because that's what we do. We send invitations. We just don't facilitate requests. We send invitations because you're worthy.
Mm-hmm.
You don't go to the ball if you don't get invited. You dig?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. This bottle's been sold out for a while, right, Jake? Pretty sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Pretty quickly after it released, I think.
Yeah, it was pretty quick, and we have a hard time selling rye single barrels, even though I think some of our best picks we've ever done were ryes. But it's just the average consumer, I think, is afraid of rye because they're very polarizing, and we've talked about this before, how you can get so many different flavors out of a rye whiskey. Somebody might have had one rye that they didn't like and just assume they don't like all ryes.
Dan.
What?
Dan's getting the shade tonight.
So there's a long-standing misconception that I don't like rye. It's not that I don't like rye; it's I don't prefer rye. But there are some really good ones out there, and the Castle and Key one was a phenomenal pick, and that's one of the. I think the ones I have more of the struggles with are like the MGP 95.5 or very, very strong straight ryes. The high percentage of malt kind of cuts through a lot of that rye, or cuts that rye spice down. Yeah. And I mean, I was one of the misconception, or fell into that misconception of rye suck. It's just you got to find the right style of rye that fits your flavor profile, and something with a high malt or a high corn content to get some more of the sweet notes in there definitely help and make it completely different. And the Restoration Rye was early on one of the few ryes that I really started drinking.
Yeah, I didn't start drinking rye until my previous brand that Jake also supported and did well with. I hope he did well with. It was one that I was just like, man, I'm not one for rye, but holy shit, this is a fucking stellar rye because it was drinkable. And mind you, it was 100% rye. So that's even grander than the 95.5s that a lot of us have experience with and kind of shy away from. But it's just a matter of not the manipulation, but the process that you take with it, And then now we graduated into a rye that, consistent since I feel since the first batch of 2022 that comes in at 113 proof. What's really, really fucking unique about that rye was that it was only 4 proof points or 5 proof points off batch strength. So minimal water going in, minimal water going into the barrel or into the bottle. And that, again, the thoughtfulness that we are, the flavor geeks that we are, to offer you a consistent quality, but at the same time, a stellar, I feel, setting the bar for continuous releases of said, rye from that point on is ridiculous. I'm right now sipping on batch 3 of 2022. It comes in, I believe, 100. Is it 103 proof? Yeah, 103 proof. And the consistency of experience is there. And that's something that I like to mention. I'm a very passionate dude, man. And I'm looking for experience. I'm looking for something to wow the fuck out of me. If taste is lacking, if something overtakes me in that experience, I'm gonna give you my vote. Because that's what I'm looking for. You know what I'm saying? Personally. This is so subjective. It's ridiculous to even consider continuously debate about it. But we do, because we have fun doing it. We have a passion to do so. Mm-hmm. So I have also had the pleasure of trying batch 1 of 2023. And I'm like, holy shit. When do we apex? When are we going to apex on this? Mm-hmm. Because every barrel has an apex. You know, every bourbon has an apex. Every spirit has an apex. I'm like, when is this going to happen? You know, but I hope it doesn't. Because I hope we still keep adjusting, we keep blending accordingly, and keep putting out this consistently amazing experientials that we can offer you in a bottle on Jake's shelf and throughout, you know, the rest of those 19 other markets, because it's just getting so much more intense in experience. You know? Jake knows this, and obviously Jake R also knows this. I never offer flavor notes when we do tastings or master prep classes, because it's just so subjective, and I don't want to lead you. I want you to experience this. I want you to get to the level where I freaking almost cry every time I do one of these, because that's how much I fucking dig about it. You know what I'm saying? And that's what's in the bottle. You know, I am the heartbeat of what effort and physicality is going in it, because I ain't making it, but I'm sharing it and I'm selling it. So it's just, I can go on and on, man. But Jake's next barrel, forget about it. Wait till you taste it.
I do want to drive home.
I already know.
I mean, in case anybody hasn't believed us yet about how good the rye was, I think you can kind of tell the full story, but you showed up to the last masterclass with like a random barrel bottle, and it was unreal. It was just some random barrel that you picked, right?
Yeah. So I have this,
which is also kind of how we got our first rye barrel, but
which is how we got our rye barrel. Yeah, no, that's why I'm laughing. I'm like, hold on, this sounds like last spring when we got together to pick your barrel, which was the first retail barrel in Illinois from Castle Key, period, that Jake and Brett chose.
Yeah, so let me just touch on that briefly, because that was a cool experience that I talk about all the time. Is we got three barrel samples. Not every, but most barrel picks work. They bring you 3 samples, and you choose one out of the 3 if you like one enough to pick one. So we did our pick, and that was cool. We were having some lunch, and Wilson pulls out another sample out of his pocket, and he goes, "You didn't do your pick." And I'm like, "What?" And he's like, "You didn't do your pick. This is your pick." He pulls out a 4th barrel and goes, "I drilled into this when I was at the distillery, and this is the best barrel I've ever tasted from Castle and Key. This is your pick." Now, of course, we can't just go with it. Anything that Gold Eagle puts their name on, we're very, very picky, and we want to make sure it's something that we love and we'll stand behind. No matter if it sells or not, it's going to be really good whiskey inside that bottle. So we ended up blinding Wilson's 4th pick against the barrel that we like the best, and it wasn't even close.
Yeah,
it was unanimous. I think we had 5 or 6 people with us, but it was unanimous, 5 or 6 to 0. So
in reality, was it not close, or was this like a Jake Sigelnick? Yeah, this was really tight, but yet it was 9 votes apart.
Did you listen? It was 5 or 6 votes to 0. That's 100%.
Yeah, that was a day, because I knew, I was just like, no, because they obviously have a phenomenal track record of picking great great barrels from distilleries we would even consider, or even we bypass, and our laps up and down the bourbon and rye trail, aisles and anywhere we go. So I just knew, I was just like, this was something that I thought I was going to bring to market under the 312 pick, but I'm just like, nope, he deserves this. Not that he needed it, he deserves this. So I'm like, you got it. This is it. I felt so strongly about it.
Yeah, we're all happy.
But yeah, I was happy. I mean, shit, I had lots of bottles, and then I was get to the third. So I was just like, hey, even better for me. But this is Sheila, everyone, just so you know, my wife, Sheila.
Shout out
Sheila.
This is Jake R. It was at our last master class, and of course, Jake.
Gotcha.
But gosh, it was, yeah. So, I mean, that to me, that third bottle that I had, I kept, and then I did a, where were we that we did the last whiskey fest something? Anyway, I took, Chicago Barrel Night is something that Chicago Magazine puts on every year, and very curated. So fortunately, I've been able to do every single year of that. And this past year, I actually used that third bottle, and that was what I poured as our special pour all night. Was nice. that third bottle, a Gold Eagle pick. And people came back. There was this group of three guys, a dad and two sons. And I was like, "Where can I buy this?" I'm like, "You can't. You can't. It's gone." And they're like, "Well, you can't just do that. You can't just give it." Tell us where to go. Then I had a backup bottle too, because I knew it would fly. Niche Restaurant in Geneva, Illinois. They were the first on premise to do a Castle and Key, which I loved that they did. I was so happy that I accepted the invitation, because I just believed in their underground and I believed their reach, and I knew that they would do something really cool with it behind the bar. That was the backup bottle. So I'm like, you can buy this one, and I gave them a taste of that, and they came back. Sheila must have given them 1,000 fucking, at least half the bottle. In
I almost gave them
and they're like, tell us where to go again. And we kept respect. Geneva, niche, and then oh my god, all night. Anyways, but the bottle to Dan's, not Dan, sorry Dan, to answer your question, but to refer back to Jake R. The last masterclass we did at Gold Eagle, the last time I was in Kentucky, I was able to roam about Warehouse B, and I looked for rye barrels, and I was just randomly drilling, and found this barrel that I thought was pretty special, and I had a bottled secretly, and it was sent to me. Had it labeled and everything, so it was kosher. And then that was the bottle that I shared at this last masterclass. It was a blind barrel, mind you. I just picked one, drilled, happened to be pretty cool, and I brought it to the masterclass, and we shared that thing. Luck of the draw, maybe, or are we just doing something that's fucking special, that very good, or that well? Right. I mean, it's time will tell. Time will tell, and I'm just excited. We're very excited. Like I said, Jake's next barrel is going to be, I know it. I already know it. I already know which one it's going to be. So I might as well put the labels now.
Good, man.
What do you want to say? Gold Eagle again?
Submit it already.
Yeah.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for listening to part 1 of our interview with Wilson Torres from Castle and Key. We hope you enjoyed it. Part 2 is also available, where we dive into the bourbon from Castle and Key and a few other interesting things. So if you enjoyed our conversation, please follow Wilson Torres at 312 MADE. That's 312 MADE on Instagram, and check out Castle and Key. Their website is castleandkey.com. Thanks, and we hope you check out part 2.